I don't say this lightly, but for a lot of 3D freelancers, this might be the most important video you watch this whole year. Not because anything I made, because of a law. For 2 years, everyone's been telling you that AI is going to eat your business. Cheap agencies, one-day turnarounds, clients disappearing. I've heard it in our community every single week. Well, starting from August 2nd, 2026, there's a law in force across the entire EU that requires every piece of photoreal AI content to be labeled as AI, publicly, on the content itself. And most brands have no idea it even applies to them. I'll show you why in the actual legal text. Before anyone in the US clicks away, stay with me, because this is exactly the type of law that never stays in Europe alone. When brands figure this out, cheap AI stops being a shortcut and starts being a liability. And somebody has to be standing there with the alternative. That's the career part for you. First, the part nobody's pricing in. Depending on which survey you look at, somewhere between 30 and 60% of consumers have a negative view on AI. The low end is general sentiment. The high end is where you ask about specific stuff like jobs. Sources are in the description, go check them. Now here's the part that surprised me. I assumed young people would be fine with it. Digital natives, right? In the US, it's the opposite. Pew found adults under 30 are the most pessimistic group about AI. Gallup measured Gen Z's anger towards AI actually going up year over year. In Europe, the picture is more mixed. Fine, but the consumers your clients are trying to win over the next 10 years? Not AI fans. And there's research on what happens when you put an AI-generated label on an ad. The Nuremberg Institute ran experiments on this. Same ad, identical. One labeled AI, one labeled human-made. The AI-labeled version scored worse on trust, worse on emotional response, and people were less willing to buy. Same ad, just the label. Keep that in mind because the label just became mandatory. Okay, so why do brands think they are safe? Because the law talks about deepfakes. And when you hear deepfake, you think fake people, fake politicians, fake celebrities. So a brand doing AI product shots of a skincare bottle thinks that's not a deepfake, that's a bottle. But read the definition, Article 3, paragraph 60. It covers AI content that resembles existing persons, objects, places, entities, or events. Objects, places. If it looks real and a normal person could mistake it for a real photo, it falls under this rule and has to be marked. There's one caveat. Obviously, fantastical stuff is excluded, so a dragon, fine, no label needed. But a photoreal shot of your product on a marble table? That's exactly what this law was written for. So every brand that quietly swapped their product photography for AI renders last year is sitting on content that needs a label. The deadline is August 2nd, 2026. Most of them haven't read past the word deepfake. Now, if you're watching this from the US or anywhere else, you're probably thinking EU law, not my circus. Here's the thing though. This has happened before, and we know how it goes. The EU is one of the biggest consumer markets on the planet, around 450 million people. Almost no global brand can afford to just not sell there. So when the EU sets a rule, most companies don't build two versions of their marketing. One for Europe, one for everywhere else. That's expensive and messy. They just apply the EU standard globally and move on. This effect is so reliable, it even has a name. The Brussels effect. Remember GDPR? A European privacy law. And now every website on earth asks you about cookies, and it inspired copycat laws from California to Brazil. That wasn't an accident, that's the pattern. And it's already starting with this one. New York State passed its own AI disclosure law for advertising. Took effect this June. It's narrower than the EU version. It only covers AI-generated people, not products. But the direction is the same, and New York is rarely the last state to do anything. So no, this isn't a European story. Europe is just first. Let's actually run the numbers because this is where it gets uncomfortable for brands. Take a brand doing 10 million a year. Not huge, very realistic client for a freelancer like you. Say they put $1 million into marketing, which is roughly the benchmark for consumer brands. And a quarter of that goes into visuals, so 250K for visuals. Now they switch to AI and save, let's be generous, 200K on that. Great, right? CFO is happy. But now every one of those visuals carries an AI label, and we just saw what the label does to buying intent. So let's be conservative. Not 40% of customers walking away, not 20. Say the label cost them just 4% of revenue. Just 4. That's already 400K gone. They save 200K to lose 400K. And every customer who walks doesn't just take one purchase with them. No repeat orders, no referrals, nothing. Now, these exact percentages, that's my model. You can argue with the inputs, but the direction is backed by research. The savings are small because visuals were never the really big cost for them. The downside touches revenue, and revenue is the really big number. And then there's also the enforcement side. The AI Act allows fines up to 15 million euros or 3% of global turnover, whichever is higher. Now, to be fair, a 10 million euro brand is not getting a 15 million fine. There are proportionality rules for smaller companies. But that's honestly not even the scary part. The scary part is what happens operationally. A brand gets flagged for unlabeled AI content. What now? Campaigns paused. Assets pulled from every channel while legal figures out what's compliant. The whole pipeline stops. I've watched client projects die over way smaller problems than this. A brand's marketing going dark for 6 weeks cost more than fines ever would. So look at what's actually on the table for a product brand now. Photography, compliant but expensive. And it doesn't scale really. Photoreal AI, cheap, but now it comes with a label that measurably hurts sales, plus legal exposure. And then there's CGI, photoreal, scalable, and it's not AI generated, so no label, no disclosure, no problem. That's you. That's literally the thing you already sell. But, and this matters, stop selling it as a 3D render. Nobody wakes up wanting a render. Sell what it actually is now. Brand safe visuals. You're the option that protects their conversion rate and keeps legal off their back. That's a completely different conversation and a completely different price. Now, everything I just walked you through is the theory. The harder part is the conversation with an actual client. How you bring this up without sounding like a lawyer. What you charge when you suddenly the compliant option. That's exactly the kind of thing we work through in my community. 2 live calls every week, no fixed agenda. You bring your situation, your client, your pricing question, and we figure it out together. Plus the full 3D Business Bootcamp, 11.5 hours on the business side of freelancing. If this video shifted something for you, that's where you take it further. Links below. Because here's the reality. The freelancers who bring this to their clients first are the ones who own this positioning. Everyone after them is just echoing it.